Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Grow Yours podcast, where we talk to coaches, consultants, advisors about everything from who they help to how their business runs. Today, I am super glad to be joined by Peter Cooper, who is in a super niche business of helping heavy trucks shop technicians to grow their business. Am I describing that right, Peter?
Right. So my niche is heavy duty truck shops. So those big 18 wheelers you see going up and down the roads. I mostly focus on helping them grow their business, optimize operations, and deal with any challenges that they might face.
All right, awesome. So, really excited to get into that and learn a little bit about that space and what you do. But first, I want the listeners to get a little bit more of a grasp of who they're talking to. So, you want to talk a little bit more about your career journey leading up to starting your business and then going from there?
Yeah. So my journey has always been in this space, in one form or another. I grew up on a farm, from a small town in central Iowa, and I was always gravitated towards mechanical things, which I later turned into having a job as a mechanic. I actually started working for the city the day I turned 18. Went to school, got a degree in that. Later on, became a master certified tech. I always really enjoyed teaching though. So in 2019, my wife and I actually uh, after we started our own shop, we later on started a technical college. We were able to grow that. Um, I'm actually what you might call a serial entrepreneur. I love to build businesses and to start businesses. And I've been able to take all of those years of building businesses and the lessons learned and use it to help other business owners with their business and hopefully be a little bit more successful and get a little bit more time out of their life instead of just being stuck in the shop all the time.
Tell me a little bit more about the technical college that you started. I've never met anyone who has done anything like that.
So pre-COVID, my wife and I, our oldest son just graduated high school and he didn't know what he wanted to do. And the local technical college told him it was going to be 2 years. It was a 2 year enrollment wait. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't know any 18-year-olds that are going to wait 2 years to do anything. So my wife and I realized it was quite a problem. Plus, there's this really big problem in any of the skilled trades. We have a huge gap of people, and then you'll hear it with about any industry now. And a lot of the technical colleges are great, but they're super high level, meaning it's a 2 to 3 year program to get through it. So we started a pretty bare bones technical college where it was really just entry level. We would take a guy. I tell people my perfect student was a kid that was fresh out of the military and worked at Taco John's, a local fast food restaurant. Didn't know what he wanted to do yet, and came and talked to us and said, "Yeah, man, in 10 weeks I'll get you a job." So I guarantee. As a matter of fact, we gave a guarantee. If we don't get you a job, you don't pay tuition. We knew that there was that big of it. But yeah, 10 weeks later, he had a job working for Penske, and these guys weren't real high level, but they were able to get a job working in a fleet and get in the door, and they knew which end of the hammer to use, and it was really good. Unfortunately, COVID kind of destroyed that. It really killed, as a lot of things, but it was a great experience. We were able to teach a lot of kids and change the lives of quite a few students.
Awesome. And how long after that ended did Ascend Consulting become born?
So I had a shop, which I sold. I stayed on with that company for a few years and helped that company grow. And then I really had this desire. I wanted to build a business of helping other people. I love solving problems. And I thought the best way to do that was to help other shop owners find a better life. And so this last January, I started this, which is now Ascent Consulting, working with other shops.
How many large truck shops exist in America? I'm a Northeast guy, so I'm from the city and I don't even understand this world, to be honest with you. But what's the abundance of these shops that exist that you're able to target this market?
So the numbers that I've seen, and it's hard to target. It's like asking how many bakers there are in the United States. The numbers
Really?
that
Is
I've
that
seen,
common?
there's about 44,000
Okay. So not too
truck
common.
repair shops. Um, but a lot of what I do, I work with different business owners. I work with business owners in general as a coach. Just my background, my niche is in specifically helping them to my shops specifically. But a lot of the lessons, it's like a lot of things. They're universal. I mean, running a business is running a business, and it helps when you have specific industry knowledge. It helps me connect with my customers. and it helps them get them there faster. But there's a lot of good lessons that really carry over to a lot of other industries.
What would you say was one of the hardest lessons learned in your serial entrepreneurial journey?
That you're only as good as yourself, meaning that if you can't, or phrase that again, you're only as good as the people you have working with you, because you can only be as much as you can be yourself. In other words, you can only work so many hours a day. And to really be good and to be a true leader, you have to really be good at making other people better.
What do you think is one of the biggest keys to grow that skill to make other people better?
When you learn that you can't manage people, you can only manage systems. You have to lead people. And one of the ways that you lead has a lot to do. I mean, you can read a lot of books on management, you can go to a lot of seminars, but one of the things they don't tell you is that leadership has more to do with your own style. You kind of have to find your own style in it, but a lot of it comes from trust. I think a lot of business owners don't ever take the time to build trust with their employees. It's kind of like if you look at a military model. There's a reason why guys are willing to follow the leader into a fight, and you really got to surround yourself with people that are willing to follow you into the fight. Because every day in business, it's like going to battle. I mean, it's not easy. You've got a lot of challenges, 100 things going at once, and you got to have a good team to make it work.
Let's talk a little bit about that team and how that applies specifically to shop owners, because I imagine most shop owners have the technical knowledge. They know how to probably build a truck from scratch, realistically. But when it comes to scaling a profitable business, they probably have a lot of issues. So, what exactly does Ascend Consulting come and look at to help bridge that gap?
So one of the things we look at is education. We try to help inform the shop owners of this is how you diagnose your business. And it's like a lot of the skilled trades, those people are tradesmen. They're very, very good at what they do. The thing that most people fail to recognize is the day that you start your business, you're no longer a mechanic. You're no longer a plumber. You're not a carpenter. You're a business owner. And that's the very first thing we have to do is get them to change their identity. Because until they change their identity, they won't start thinking like a business owner. They keep trying to think like a technician. In other words, the technician mindset is usually I have to do it. I'm the best person to do it. I get my self worth from what I do with my own two hands, and that really has to change. That's one of the biggest hurdles for business owners is changing that mindset of basically being a doer and turning into a leader.
So, when you're getting approached by these shop owners, is that something that they know is their problem? Or they just come to you and they're like, hey, I need a whole bunch of help?
It's like a lot of things. There's a variety. I just talked to a gentleman today that knew that. He's second generation. He says, "Hey, I know that I'm the limiting factor of the business. I need help." And I think it's like a lot of things in life. It's like if you hit a if you work out, and you're a high performing athlete and you hit a plateau, the next logical step for that person is get a coach. But that's not always true in business. Like it's a real hard thing for a person that started a business from scratch to say, I need help and realize that they're at that level that they're not going to achieve the next level until they change their mind. So there's a variety of different people that come to me. Some of them are just by chance that, I mean, I've different chance meetings. Sometimes it's someone just tells them you need to go get some help. Uh, and sometimes I meet a lot of people at different events and different conventions and have conversations and I try to help them see things. And it's really, it's just really different. It's, you can kind of see their mind change really quickly when you start explaining things and they start realizing that, hey, I'm not the only guy that has that problem. Like so many of these people think that they're having these problems for the first time. And it's like, you're not the only one. There's a lot of people out there that are struggling with the same thing.
Aside from the being a business owner bottleneck, what are some of the actual technical bottlenecks within the business that you see people struggling with the most? Is it finance? Is it marketing? Where do you really see the biggest issues?
I think the biggest issue for most businesses is efficiency. They're just horribly inefficient organizations. You've got a lot of people doing a lot of things. There's not a clear way of doing it. A lot of business owners, they build a business because they're good at a skilled trade. But the equation I tell business owners, it's like building a house. You don't just show up and start nailing some boards together and hope you build a livable structure. But that's how people build businesses. They literally are good at something and they just go do that something and they hope that they build a great business. And they never step back and say, this is my plan. This is how we're going to build the business. These are the target profits we want. And a lot of it comes down to efficiencies. And people, just like owners, they become blind to it. They can't see that that's what's really going on. They don't see that this guy over here has to walk halfway across the building to go do something simple that should be 2 steps away from it. They just get blind to it.
Yeah, I wouldn't even, as I'm not a brick and mortar business, so I would never think like the location of certain stations and things like that is vitally important to the workflow, but that does make a lot of sense.
Well, it's important in anything. Just think about it in your own workflow in your computer. Right? If you have something you use every day, you create a shortcut, you put it on your desktop.
Yeah.
You don't hide it 3 layers down in the file, and that's a perfect metaphor for business as a whole. Any business is very few of them are thought out well. If you really want to see something cool about that, watch the movie called The Founders, and there's a scene in there where they actually take a piece of chalk and draw out on a tennis court how to make an efficient kitchen. And that's another example. If you think about how many steps, so one of the things I tell owners to do is just count how many steps a technician takes. Like every phone, every smartwatch, everybody, it has a pedometer and it tracks your footsteps. If you want to measure success, measure how many steps your technician takes. And you can do that for restaurants, you can do it for construction work, you can do it for a plumber. Just, anything you measure will grow. So just measure that number and watch it reduce as you bring in efficiencies.
That's a great idea. That's really cool, actually. um, okay, so you seem to have the answers to a lot of these problems that truck owners have. How do you go about diagnosing these problems for the people who are totally unaware of what needs to be changed?
Well, I think it's kind of like the approach of any problem. What is your desired outcome? So I work with business owners. I say, let's work backwards. So many people say, you ask them, what's your goal? And they say, I want to make $5 million. And I'm like, well, I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody that makes $5 million that keeps $5 million. So let's talk about what do you really want, and what you want is your desired profits. And so if you have a number, we'll put that number up there. Say it's $1 million. Well, what does it take to make $1 million profit? Well, we're going to build in 20%, profit margin or whatever margin we can get, depending on their industry, and then we work backwards from that. And that's how we diagnose the business. Is really getting to see what are they capable of. I did an exercise last week. I was in Phoenix at a conference, and I asked every business owner in the room. I said, by a show of hands, how many people's business would survive if they disappeared for a month? And there was only 2 people out of 300 that put their hands up. I said, everybody else, I want you to get a calculator out, and I want you to put in whatever your sales were last year in your business, and I want you to divide that by 2,080, which is the number of hours in a year. And I said, that's what you're worth. And I said, that's another way of looking at it. Is you start figuring out what are you really worth, and then you get owners that understand that task is not what they should be doing with their time. They shouldn't be touching every single invoice that comes through the business. It's not worth their time. And that's where a lot of it starts with diagnosing, is getting them to see a different point of view.
Never thought about that, but now I
Well,
will.
think about what your time's worth, though. I mean, is it really worth you cleaning the toilet at 5 o'clock in the morning if you're running a
No,
multi-million-dollar business?
I would assume most multi-million-dollar business owners aren't cleaning the toilets.
Well, that's what I did when I ran my shop. I would go in at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh, that needs done. Let me just go do that. Because you have to understand the mindset of most business owners. Most business owners are very high functioning people. With a lot of them have ADHD. I'm making some generalizations, but the facts really prove it. Your true powerful entrepreneurs, the ones that are just absolutely like a dog with a bone, a lot of them have ADHD and they have a hard time focusing. And they also have what I call squirrel moments. They're chasing every little shiny thing in the room. And that's one way to help people focus, is really getting them to understand that time is a resource, and that's what's more valuable than money. So many business owners all they worry about is income, And it's like income or money is not the limiting factor in your life. It's time. And when you start realizing that that's a resource that's a very finite resource, you really can start to change the way people think about their business.
I always say that to my girlfriend all the time. I'm like, who cares about how much it costs? How much time is it going to take? How
Right.
much time are you willing to trade for it? Because
Right.
she's a teacher, right? So when she wants to buy or do something expensive, I'm like, all right, let's think about it. Let's think about how much effort and time, how many periods of the day. That's how I break it up for her.
Right.
I'm like, how many class periods of the day is that going to cost you? And sometimes I'll show her. I'll be like, that's like a week worth of work, and she's like, yeah, I don't want it that bad. I'm like, there you go.
Well, and that's a valid point. I mean, I teach my children the same thing. I have a 15-year-old son that just got his first vehicle, and I'm like, hey, you know,
15?
trucks are, yeah, in Iowa you can drive when you're 14 if you work on a farm, but um,
Really?
yeah. And
That's
I said,
crazy.
hey, well, I think you get what's called a school permit too. They're only allowed to drive back and forth to school and to work. But he
Yeah, I
bought a
mean,
truck, he bought a 22-year-old truck that gets 13 miles a gallon. I said, at $10 an hour, you got to work a lot of hours to buy gas. How bad do you want this truck? Like, and I think if more people equated time to money, because in reality, that's what we do in the skilled trades, whether you're a plumber or you're an electrician, people are trading time for money. Almost everybody in our society does that. We all trade time for money. And one of the most powerful things you can do is change your brain and realize that that money equates to time in your life. But also, you've got to quit chasing time, and you've got to quit equating dollars to time when you're an owner. Yeah, your employees, you're trading that, but as an owner, your time is worth multiples of that because you are the business at that level, right? And that's the next thing we work on with people is let's get above that. Let's get to that next level where the business is not you. So I always advise people don't put your name on the door because then every day when you show up, that the business is you. Um, and then that's another mindset problem of most people that own a business. Their entire identity is the business. And anytime, just as an experiment, anybody listening to this, next time you go to any kind of event, ask somebody what they do, and I guarantee you that they will identify who they are by what they do. In other words, well, I'm a teacher, I'm a carpenter, and you really start to see that there's a really tight connection between what people do and their self worth.
so you talked about a little bit earlier how leading is important because you're only as good as your team and you can only do so much on your own. What do you see is unique about leading trade-oriented teams versus other industries?
I think the similarities are pretty close. I mean, people are people, humans are
Mhm.
humans, right? Um, I think a lot of shop owners have to really look at it from that standpoint that you're employing humans, you're not employing robots. At least we aren't yet. They haven't been able to figure out AI to fix trucks yet.
I think, well, sorry to interrupt you, but on the topic of I think that the tradesmen will be the last ones to go,
They
honestly.
absolutely will be.
So I think people who are intelligent and like good at math and stuff should be more afraid of AI than the I don't want to say lower level worker because that's the wrong term, but trade level workers.
Oh, absolutely. I think as a side note, anybody who can do their job from home, if you can do your job remotely, those are the first people that are going to go.
Yep,
Because
I
if you can
agree.
do your job from anywhere, so can a computer. And even if AI figures out how to fix a truck, they haven't got the hardware there yet because all the money and infrastructure is going into software, and it's going to be a while. But on it, whether that's it, people we're employing people. We're not employing robots, and you got to treat them like people. And the other thing business owners have to understand about people is you need to be who you want to be today. So if you want to be a successful business owner that has their stuff together, then come to work every day dressed like a successful business owner that has their stuff together. And sometimes I have to tell them, look, fake it till you make it. Because if you show up enough times looking like you're a smart business owner, eventually you'll be one. And the same way goes with the way you treat your people. If you don't have a well-run, well-organized organization, you will attract unorganized, unmotivated people. And I don't think enough business owners think about that when they're hiring people. What image are they giving you? And let's face it, in this world with a lot of industries, especially in the skilled trades, you're not interviewing them anymore. They're interviewing you. Like they've already got 2 or 3 job offers. You may interview one technician or one carpenter or one whatever. That person's got 4 or 5 job offers. And I think so many business owners haven't changed that mindset yet to understand that it's really an interview process is you selling the business to them, that they're not there to sell themselves to you anymore. And you'll figure out real quick you start attracting a lot better people when you do that. And it's a lot less work to manage good people.
Why?
Well, because they already have their stuff together, right? If you start hiring on attitude and aptitude and stop hiring out of desperation, like so many business owners, this is the cycle. I get busy or a guy quit. I've got to hire somebody. The first warm-blooded person that walks through the door that says I can do the job, that's who gets the job. And then they later find out they know nothing about this person. They don't know their work history. They don't know anything about their mental status or their work ethic. And I tell people, look, you got to slow down. Like, I know that you need that person today, but what's that person cost you when you rely on them and then they leave? It's very expensive. So I encourage people, look, when you're hiring people, do aptitude tests, do personality tests. It's pretty eye-opening when you read some of these, what you're really hiring. And some of the best people I've ever hired in all my years of business were people that I hired strictly out of attitude and aptitude. I learned a lesson. I used to in a limo company, and I would tell people every day, I can teach you to drive a limo. I can't teach you to have a good attitude.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I was having that discussion with somebody on my team today. I was asking why something was not done, and he was just like, I wasn't feeling motivated today. And I was like, huh, I don't even know you well enough to know what motivates you. I wouldn't even know how to have the conversation to say, well, how can we fix that? I mean, obviously, that's where we went. We said, hey, how can we fix that motivation? What do you need to be more motivated throughout the day? But he was like, as one of my earlier hires, he definitely was one of the first people who came through the door.
And one of the things you'll find out is most people you deal with, they don't know what motivates them. They don't know yet. So sometimes you have to be, this is something that I teach, and I say this over and over again, and I tell all the people I work with. You don't fix trucks, you fix people, and the people fix trucks. And that's true about every business, which is another thing owners have to make a mindset shift of. And so many of them will come to me and say, I'm not a counselor. I didn't sign up to do this. And it's like, well, you're in it now. That's what it is. Because if you don't take care of your people and you don't figure out how to motivate them, then you're getting nothing done. And so running a business and owning a business is truly more about psychology than it is about whether or not you know how to fix toilets or fix trucks or whatever industry you're in. And I think the people that are the most successful in business are the ones that are the best with people, even if that's not who you are. I mean, I'm naturally an introvert. It wasn't my thing. Like
Same.
that's not what I wanted to be. But sometimes as we go through stages in life, we have to force ourselves to be the person we need to be. And this is especially important with business owners because you have very limited resources. You're not Google or Apple. You can't throw millions and billions of dollars at a problem and hope that it fixes it, right? Like you have very limited resources of time and money. And sometimes the fastest way to fix a problem is just change you, meaning as an owner. You've got to change your brain. You've got to continue to grow and expand and be a better person.
What motivates you?
Challenge. I do things because they're hard, not because they're easy. So I climb mountains with dirt bikes. It's not because it's easy, it's because it's hard. But everything that's worth doing is hard, right? I mean, it's like video games. They're a very hollow victory. And I think that's another problem we have with a lot of people in society is they don't understand that, right? That they have this their brain chemistry, they're getting their fix from the wrong source. Perfect example of that, this is a common mistake business owners make. They have what I call the daddy fix it syndrome. And this is like when you have children and they bring you a broken toy and they say, Daddy, fix it, it's broken. And you fix it and you feel great about it because you fixed it. And the child feels great because it got fixed. But business owners do the same thing with their employees. Their employees bring them a problem and they fix it. So then they get stuck in this endless loop of they're that guy that has to do everything. And they don't realize that subconsciously they're thriving off this really small dopamine drip throughout the day of all those really small wins. It's like scrolling Facebook all day. social media endlessly. You're getting all these little tiny dopamine drips instead of the big one that lasts. And the other dangerous thing about that mindset of trying to fix all the problems for your people is you're stealing their victory. You're taking that win from them. And those people become less and less motivated and less engaged in what's going on throughout time because they aren't the one doing it. They have no wins. It's just this mindset of, well, it doesn't matter what my mindset is or what my opinion is because he's going to do whatever he's going to do. And hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying. It's a real pitfall people fall into.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense, actually. It's not something I ever thought about, but it does make a lot of sense.
It's a whole different way of managing people. It's back to that again. You know, if you start getting into some of the science of neurochemistry and what motivates people, there's a really good book on this, by the way. It's called From Doing to Leading. It's actually written by a guy that managed body shops. And it's crazy that a guy that managed body shops gets into writing a book about neurochemistry, but it really makes sense about, you know, when you truly understand what motivates humans and where those emotions come from, it's a lot easier to lead them.
I would argue that most people are money motivated. Would you say that's true?
I wouldn't say it's true.
Why?
They think they're motivated by money, but what they're really motivated by is either one, the idea of money, which is the power of it, or number two, what are they getting with the money? Which is another huge.
Go ahead.
Another huge problem in a lot of these small businesses is you have owners that aren't vested in their people, and they're not vested in. When I say people, I don't mean employees. I mean they're not invested in their employees as people and looking out for their best interest, their welfare. And it's this mindset of money fixes all problems that they start realizing that that's why a lot of these employees are in this what they call a hedonic treadmill, this endless loop, this cycle of the same problem over and over again, because they don't understand money. Money is just a resource. Like time is a resource. It's just a resource.
I would agree there. I always say money doesn't matter. I'm more into convenience, and that which is a byproduct of money. But money doesn't bring, like, money is not the convenience. The convenience
Right.
is what the money gets.
And you see it, perfect example. Anybody out there that's a business owner, next time you interview somebody, ask them why they're leaving, where they're at, why they want to leave. And 8 out of 10, the answer will not be money. They're not leaving because they don't like the money. They're leaving because they don't like the environment. They don't like their coworkers. They don't like the way it's ran. They don't like the structure. They don't like the hours. It's very rarely money. And I actually kept track of this. I did a kind of an internal study, and it was about 80%. And which is also why I reminded them that during the interview, I would look right at them and say, I'm not going to give you a job offer because what you're going to do is go back. They're going to offer you more money and you're going to stay. And then you're going to forget the fact that the reason you're leaving is not for money. You're leaving because of the conditions. And that's what we do better here. You know, we treat people differently. I mean, we treat people so differently in my shop. This is not BS. We shut the shop down 3 days a week and went to grandma's house for lunch. My mom owned a house right across the street, and we went to her house 3 days a lunch, 3 days a week for lunch. And that's what I tell people. That's truly treating your people right. It's things like that.
Seems like you got all the knowledge. So now I want to shift gears a little bit to how you show people that you have all this knowledge and talk a little bit about how you market yourself and your business. And I mean, I guess Ascend is part of that, but how do you go about doing that right now?
Well, I think in this space of being a coach, if you really want to position yourself, you kind of have to do it through knowledge. At least that's always been my philosophy. That's the way I won in my other businesses, was through doing it better. But it's also you have to have a willingness to help people, even if you're not going to make money. You have to build those long lasting relationships. And I understand it's hard when someone's first starting out and you're, you may be hand to mouth or really struggling financially. But I had a really good business person tell me once that people can sense fear and desperation just like dogs can. And if you're so desperate that what you're doing, you have to sell or you have to close somebody on it, they're going to sense that. And that really positions yourself a lot lower in the pecking order of your authority than when people do that in a desperation. So the way I've done it is I'm trying to position myself as a subject matter expert. I put a lot of information out there for free with only the hope that the right person that really believes in what I do and believes in what I have to say, or the message, is going to be willing to essentially pay me for that knowledge at a higher level. But that's how I've done it. Is I've just put myself out there, and I've made alliances with important people and important organizations, and just honestly offered them my help with no expectation in return.
I understand that. A big value first proposition and then
Absolutely.
partnership later. Makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense.
And never be the
Um,
guy selling.
well, sales, I mean, we can talk about that a little bit. Sales is not what it's stigmatized to be, and that's something I've learned very early in my career. It's you're more doing a solution discovery than you are selling. So you discover what solution this person could potentially benefit this person or business or whatever, and then you craft an offer around that. And I think a big misconception people get into when they're trying to sell their self or their skills or whatever is that they're coming in and they're like, all right, I do this. So I need to talk about this thing that I do a whole lot and show people how good I am at this thing that I do. When realistically, that's not the answer. I don't think.
Yeah, and I think some of it is you have to have a track record, right? If you have a reputation, that goes a long way. Uh, but I agree what you're saying. I mean, the company that I ran, our company slogan was literally "We bring solutions," because that's what we did. People would ask what we do, and we solve problems. Like, you bring a problem, we'll solve it. And our people had that mindset too. Like, they understood that they were there to solve a problem, that they weren't just there to fix trucks. And sometimes the thing that needs to be solved isn't always fixing trucks. Sometimes you have a guy, a truck driver breaks down, right? He's not having his best day. It's like when you go to the ER, it's not the best day of your life. And sometimes the solution was just go get the guy something to eat because that's what he needed.
How are you going about positioning yourself as an expert, somebody with a lot of knowledge? What are you actually doing? What are the
So one of the
deliverables,
things
quote
one of the
unquote?
things I did was I reached out to the industry leading company that writes software for people that manage and run truck repair shops. It's called Fullbay, and I reached out to them and said, "Hey, and I had a relationship with them. You know, for example, I built relationships with some of their employees over the years using their product, and I just offered my help. And I said, hey, if you ever need anything, if you need, I know that you guys are going to start creating some content. Be happy to weigh in on articles or help you with that." And I turned that relationship into becoming their brand ambassador solely because I reached out to them and said I want to help. I didn't expect anything in return. But I think it was Ron Popeil said, "There's no such thing as bad publicity. So whatever you can do to get your name out, right, is a good thing, even if it's not directly in line today with what you're doing. Being, putting yourself out there is definitely worth it."
You mentioned that you were at an event doing some speaking recently in Arizona. What were some of the topics of the talks that you had? Those five.
So one topic, I did a presentation on changing your mindset from being a technician to a business owner, which actually plays into some of what we've talked about here. Another presentation I did was about motivating employees with bonus structures, um, which is, pay, of course. We did an episode where we interviewed some other shop owners. They called a shop owners roundtable, essentially just I don't know, you call it fireside chat, or there's other terms they use. Um, but that's another thing to do as a coach or a consultant. Find out what events in your industry are impactful and just go to it. Go to it and network. Like, I've met a lot of really good people and had a lot of good conversations. And whether I get any clients out of it or not, it's worth it to me because I learn more about my customer, my client base, my target audience by going to events like that.
As we wrap up here, what is one piece of advice you'd offer to an entrepreneur or a skilled professional that's turning entrepreneur, stepping into growing their business or at the position where it's time to scale? The number one thing.
Education. I used to work at a motorcycle race shop. I was a Ducati technician early in my life. I would see people come in and spend thousands of dollars on go fast parts. I just got to go faster. 2 more horsepower and I'm going to win that race. And it's like, no, what you really need to do is go get a coach and learn how to actually race. That's what's going to make you faster. And I think the same thing goes with business owners. That next latest, greatest tool, that next hire that's the greatest technician you thought you ever knew is not what's going to save your business or make your business thrive. What's going to make your business thrive is you. And you have to spend the time and the money on yourself. You have to invest in yourself. And so whether that's going out and getting a coach, which as we all know, if you look at the sports world, no team ever wins without a coach, or if you choose to go and read books and do it yourself, you need to invest in yourself. So what I tell people is you need to set aside a certain amount of time every day. It's what I call executive time for your own personal growth and education, and try to come up with a path. In other words, try to learn a skill or shore up a skill that you know you need. And you can do it fairly inexpensively. I mean, books are not that expensive, let's face it. I mean, 10, $20, you can learn a lot of stuff.
All right. I think that's a great way for us to end it off. I thought today was extremely valuable. I definitely learned a lot. Last thing before we go is where could people find you, find your business?
So they can find me on LinkedIn, every form of social media. Our website is ascendconsulting.help because we help business owners. And or they can just reach out to me on social media.
All right. Awesome. Everybody, this has been the Grow Yours podcast. Peter, thank you again for jumping on and giving us some wise words, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.